All right, hello, hello. We're going to talk more about stress today, and I am going to share my screen so I can go through this with you all. Wait a second, let me get in the right window here. So, we're going to talk about how you can create a personalized stress management plan. I think sometimes we hear the word stress and it's like, I don't know if I like feel stressed, but maybe I do. And we hear a lot about cortisol and all that kind of stuff. And I think next week we will go through an actual Dutch test report because I feel like seeing that on paper, like that's obviously a really good way to create a personalized stress plan when we see exactly what your cortisol patterns are. And I'm doing, again, just a reminder, I'm doing a stress workshop. At the end of the month, so January 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to kind of go through how does stress affect hormones and stubborn weight and gut and like all the things, putting it all together. So we'll talk about this today, but I want you to know that that's coming up. And then next week, we'll actually go through a Dutch report together on a client that I've worked with so we can really pick apart and see like what are we looking for, what information does it give us, and all that good stuff. So all right, so first let's talk about why we want to personalize stress management. And this is something that I'm very passionate about because I see a lot of people commenting cortisol on all these like random cortisol drinks that they see on Instagram. And it really matters that it's personalized because you can have different stress patterns, and the same interventions that work for one can actually be detrimental or make the others worse. So, I want to know, and part of what we'll talk about in the stress workshop on the 27th is I want to know and I want to help you guys figure out, are you hyper cortisol or hypo? So let's talk through this a little bit. First, like everyone is different. Stress affects everyone differently. There's different triggers, different responses, different hormonal patterns. I've never seen any two Dutch tests that were the same. So that's a big thing. Also, genetics play a really big role in your ability to handle stress. You may have heard a lot about MTHFR, and that plays a really big role in your ability to clear cortisol once it's been released. There are other genetics, which I'll show you guys more when we do Dutch next week. But knowing your genetics, know how your body deals with stress and like clears cortisol is really helpful in personalizing, obviously, how we're managing it. It has a wide impact. It's not just a brain thing or um, just like feeling stressed or anxious in the moment. Chronic stress disrupts hormones. It will tank your energy. It's almost like if you're running on adrenaline for so long and then you crash, your mood is up and down. Have you ever felt like, oh my gosh, I know that I'm being crazy right now, but I can't help it? And even your metabolism and your metabolic function. So we get better outcomes when we know exactly what's going on with each person because we can really strategically place lifestyle interventions and nervous system rebalance where it needs to be placed in order to build long-term resilience. So first, we want to identify your stress signs and symptoms, talking about some physical signals, so persistent fatigue and low energy, sleep disturbances, insomnia, muscle tension. Have you ever felt like your like shoulders are up in your ears all the time and you have to like just consciously relax? Headaches, jaw clenching would be a big one, and digestive issues. Remember that the gut brain connection is powerful. It connects through the vagal nerve, and so those go hand in hand. And then, just from an emotional standpoint, just heightened anxiety or worry, maybe some intrusive thoughts that start to like grab hold and have more power. Irritability and mood swings, not feeling motivated. So maybe you have the to-do list. It's not that you can't do those things, but you just like can't get going, can't get motivated, and feeling overwhelmed. So that like brain won't turn off. There's constantly things going through your mind, and that leads to a lot of overwhelm. So The first step really is being able to identify what you're feeling and what's happening, and then we can really create some practical ways to get a hold of that, identify it, turn things around before it becomes that like more before it takes over, basically. So awareness is the first step toward taking control. So I want you guys to think through that a little bit. And then step two is to pinpoint your stressors. So like I know that noise is a big stressor of mine. I'm not sure when that happened. I'm sure motherhood has something to do with it, but the radio, the mom 1,000 times, the chaos, like noise is a big trigger for me. Okay. But let's talk through some other ones. So it can be, and these things, I would say noise is like the straw that broke the camel's back when all of these other things are going on. Okay. So external pressures, work demands, maybe things going on with relationships, financial concerns, and then environmental factors. So maybe you walk into a room and it's chaotic and you're thinking, oh, I need to do this, this, and this, or you look at a calendar and you're like, gosh, I need to make the kids' dentist appointments, just that whole cycle. Okay. Internal sources would be like chronic worry, feeling like everything has to be perfect, health concerns, unresolved emotions, and just kind of those things that like seem to always hang over you. It could be life transitions. So, recent life changes, just kind of recurring patterns that you see happening over and over in life. So all of these things are kind of brewing under the surface, and then some of the more, like noise or someone spills something, like those are the kind of things that are just going to like set you over the edge. I find it really helpful to ask friends or family for their perspective because they often see things that we don't see. Make sure that you are not defensive as a response when you ask this, but really be receptive and curious and try to, kind of talk through or think through, okay, what are the things that are brewing underneath that then set me over the edge? And what are some things that I can do to cut down on that? And then step three, understanding your stress response. So, number one, checking your perception. So, what do you or why do you perceive these situations as threats? I have to ask myself, like, why does the glass of spilled milk matter? It takes a few minutes to wipe it up, but in my mind, in the moment, it's adding so many other things to my to-do list, that sort of thing. Okay. I'm just being really honest with you guys. Coping patterns. So recognize how you typically respond. Do you avoid it? Do you confront it? Do you have unhealthy habits surrounding it? Do you maybe go to the pantry and eat sugar? Do you yell? And identifying what these things that you typically do so that we can really start strategically trying to change those things. So strategic insights number three, having self-awareness and choosing the right management strategies. Okay. And I do this for the kids. We really work on emotional intelligence and being able to identify, like, how am I feeling right now? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling scared. And then what are some things that you can do that help you feel better in that moment? And we have a chart. I show it to the kids, and then I often find that I'm not doing it. But we as moms, and this doesn't just have to do with kids, even if you don't have kids, it could be coworkers or just other people in your life. But we want to model the emotional intelligence. And I think this is something that if more of the population knew how to do this, we'd be in much different state than we are now. Um, so I really want you to write down, like, when I'm feeling stressed, what are some things that help? Maybe calling a friend, reading a chapter of a book, a fidget, going for a 5-minute walk, just changing your environment, going outside, and write down the things that are actually going to help satisfy that emotion in all of this rather than leaving. I'll say right now, like, you're not going to be able to think of it in the moment. It's going to be just like go to the pantry and get something sweet or pour a glass of wine. Like that's just kind of what we default to. But I really want you to identify what the triggers are, how you typically handle it, and write down some ways that you could, write down some things that you could use to calm yourself or bring yourself out of that state instead of some of the unhealthy habits. So choosing effective stress management strategies, I got ahead of myself a little bit, but immediate relief with for nervous system dysregulation, that's going to be like deep breathing. I talked a little bit last week, but I'll say it again, the 4-4-6 breathing. So breathing in for 4, holding your breath for 4, and then breathing out for 6. That's going to stimulate the vagal nerve to turn on the rest and digest nervous system. Meditation and mindfulness, which is always great, even if, listen, I don't want us to think about this as it has to be like a 20 minutes, no one talking to us, like kind of like this picture. That's not going to happen. I mean, maybe step outside for 2 minutes, close your eyes, let your shoulders drop, and that sort of thing. Relax your muscles, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth so you're not clenching your jaw. Those are the kind of things I mean. And then cause focused solutions. So this is looking at the root of where these things are coming up and strategically problem solving how to better handle them. Time management systems. I find it really helpful personally to look at things as either glass balls or plastic balls. So at the beginning of my day, when I have the list, I put an asterisk by the glass balls. In other words, if I drop this, it's not going to be good. I need to make sure that I prioritize these things. Otherwise, it just turns into this like long, never ending to do list. It's hard to figure out what you need to do when. Lifestyle adjustments, maybe that means setting some more margin. Again, even if it's just a couple minutes, maybe looking at the day and figuring out, gosh, when can I feel that like stress or rushing tension, getting the kids out to the door to school in the morning and, whatever it is throughout the day and strategically building in some little pockets of time, boundaries so that we can better handle that. So I'll just share a practical thing that I've done. I was in a really bad habit of getting up, immediately checking my watch or my phone, on top of the already to-do list for the day. I'm getting bombarded by all these other things, messages and things that I need to handle. And I am also simultaneously drinking coffee, which is giving me a big jolt of cortisol. And by the time the kids are up and we're like doing that whole thing, I am living in fight or flight for the entire morning. Okay. And it's no wonder you would have, or I would have an energy crash mid-afternoon because I am like in adrenaline pumping mode all day long. I never give myself time. So changing that a little bit doesn't have to be crazy, but I don't pick up my phone for at least 30 minutes. I have my coffee, have a quiet time. Even this does not have to be 30 minutes to an hour. I'm talking like 10 minutes, okay? Then we're getting ready to go, pack the lunches and get out the door for school, but just being really intentional with some very short breaks where you can just give your nervous system a few minutes to calm and switch and relax is so helpful. Okay. So I want all of you to do this. I want you to think about what are the triggers? What are some practical things that I can do to put some margin in, set some boundaries, and change some of this? Okay. And then using the Dutch test is primarily the way that I'd say Dutch and genetics because genetics play a big role in it also. But looking at your cortisol pattern throughout the day. So with Dutch, it stands for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. We look at it over 24 hours. Like if you go and get a cortisol test done at your doctor, it's going to be just one snapshot at 8 a.m. But your cortisol, it can be normal at 8 a.m. and way wacky the rest of the time. It's not helpful to just have one reading. It can give us a little bit of an indication, but it's not, it's cortisol has to be a pattern. So with Dutch, we're collecting it over a 24-hour period. It's measuring cortisol patterns, sex hormones, melatonin, and different metabolites throughout the day. And really, it looks at exactly how your body is handling stress. This goes back to, am I hypocortisol or hyper? So let me give you just a quick hyper would be more hot, wired, anxious. Hypo is more exhausted, unmotivated. Um, that I don't want to say the term depression because I don't, that's a little bit intense, but they're very different patterns and we want to address them in very different ways. Okay. The same um adaptogen like herbs are can make hypo worse if and vice versa. So we really want to make sure we get that right. There are assessments in the Thrive 9 app that you can do to gauge your pattern. Does a pretty good job, but I have run into some cases where Dutch did not match with the assessments. Um, so we can use Dutch to look at cortisol imbalances. That helps us figure out things like chronic stress, fatigue, and just overall adrenal dysfunction. It looks at metabolic markers, so adrenal function, hormone, metabolism. Remember, there's a hormonal hierarchy. So things like cortisol and insulin are going to come first before sex hormones, things like estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. And that's just a simple human survival mechanism where if we're running from tigers all day, we're not procreating, we're not digesting food. Like it goes away from all of the unnecessary body parts and systems to prioritize survival. Okay. We don't want to live in survival mode for a long period of time. It's okay for a brief period of time, but when it becomes that chronic, like I talked about last week, that chronic low grade stress and elevated cortisol, that really wreaks havoc on how you feel. And then based on that information, we can look at targeted solutions. So when specifically do I need to be humming or doing breath work? And what does my circadian rhythm look like? And how can I support that? What herbs and supplements and that sort of thing are going to help the most? So that really helps us give recommendations specifically for you. So like if you have high evening cortisol, we're going to tailor relaxation protocols, sleep hygiene. If you have low morning cortisol, we want to boost energy and help regulate the circadian rhythm. So we really can see like what is it following the curve that it should, or are things out of whack? Okay, so it just gives us more precision and helps us formulate the personalized interventions that are going to help you feel better faster. And that's really the goal, like feel better faster, right? All right. So what I want all of you to do is track your patterns. I want you to document your stress signs and triggers this week, like, and just be aware of it, be thinking about it. Okay. Implement at least one new stress management technique. And if you need some ideas about more in-depth, kind of ways to do that, make sure you go back and listen to the Q&A from last week. We talked about that and we'll continue talking about it all month. And then for those of you who are doing Dutch, obviously we will sit down, we'll look at it together, we'll customize your plan. And really, I want you to feel like you walk away with the tools that you need to manage this long term. Okay. All right. I think I managed to do this in 20 minutes. I never like for the replay to be super long. So let me know if you watch the replay, if it's helpful. We will go through an actual Dutch test report next week. So please, please, please join me for that. And then mark your calendar for January 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. You do need to register for that. So if you want to register for that, please let me know. And we will dive into all of this much more in detail. Okay. And just remember that stress has an effect on your weight, on your hormones, on the brain fog, the energy. So it's not something that we want to miss. And it doesn't mean that you have to quit your job, get rid of your kids, your husband, and like all the stressors. It just means that we need to be intentional with looking at, okay, how do we navigate this? And what are some really practical tips that will help me handle everything better? All right, you guys have an awesome rest of your week, and I'll see you next week.